Well, there's a saying that problems don't go away. Life sort of almost seems to just keep bringing these issues to the surface. A bit like, pushing the beach ball below the surface. Eventually it's going to come up at some point. And life sort of gives us those opportunities so that we can actually look at it and heal. And until we actually are able to look at it and heal, those situations will keep happening.
And welcome to Marriage and Family Life from FamilyLifeAustralia.com. We invite you to stay tuned for practical advice and encouraging stories to bring you hope and to enrich your marriage and family.
Sometimes in life, we overreact to things that annoy us, and afterwards we step back and say, now where did that come from? Why did I overreact like that? Many times these overreactions reveal that there's something more going on beneath the surface, and that's what we're going to be talking about today on Marriage and Family Life, overreactions and what is going on beneath the surface, what we can learn from these experiences, and how we can overcome them. All that and more on today's edition of Marriage and Family Life. With me today in the studio is Counsellor Scott Morgan.
Hi, Eric. How are you?
Real good. Welcome to the program. Glad to have you with us. And when you mentioned this topic at first, I was like, I don't know, but all of a sudden I started thinking about it. And there are times in life where, little things annoy you, but then you find out that your reaction to them was way over what a normal person would have done. And so I'm like, now why did I do that? Do you ever have this kind of experience?
Personally?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, no. Oh, you're the perfect counselor, so it's just for other people, right?
That's correct. No, I definitely have my moments.
Okay, so we want to kind of dig into this. What is going on? And before we do dig into this, one of the things that I remembered when you mentioned this topic is an interview I did a while ago with Caroline Rickard, and that as an adult, she had a similar experience. She overreacted to something and then later was like, well, why did I do that? So let's listen to what she had to say and then dig into what was going on.
Sure.
One of the school holidays, the youth group were heading out to go on a barbecue somewhere, and we had an 8-seater car and we're all heading out, but my kids chose to get in the other car. And I just sort of stood there in utter amazement and got very upset and refused to go on the barbecue and went inside and sort of stopped long enough to actually say, well, what was that about? Where did that come from? What was that reaction all about? And when I analysed it and thought about it, I realised that it stemmed itself back to I felt rejected again, like I'd felt rejected when my mother left. And the rejection just reared its ugly head again. It was another one of those things I thought I dealt with through prayer, but obviously there was a root left that was able to regrow.
So that whole theme of rejection just kind of triggered something.
Yeah. Why did I react that way in that particular manner for that particular time? What was the underlying thing? And the underlying thing was feeling rejected. Now, my kids weren't rejecting me. They were just doing what normal kids of their age do. They wanted to hang out with their mates and their friends, and it was going to be more fun in that car than it was going with Mum.
So it had nothing to do with you?
It had nothing to do with me. But I took it on as it did, that they didn't love me. They didn't care. They didn't want to hang out with me. They were just happy to go with somebody else.
All those feelings from your childhood
just came back up again.
And that is an excerpt from an interview with Caroline Rickard. And if you'd like to hear the full interview with her, you can look at our website in our archives. It's under the title, Mother Walks Out on 7 Children with Caroline Rickard. It has a happy ending. She gets back with the whole family. It's a great story. But in that story, even after she was reunited with her husband and the family and dealt with a lot of the emotional issues that caused her to leave her children, she had this incident, which we just heard there, where something triggered an overreaction. What was going on beneath the surface?
Well, like Caroline said, that situation triggered childhood rejection. I think the key to her story was that she was able to pause long enough to actually have a look at it and become aware of it. And I think a lot of times we can have these experiences and not have the awareness to have a look at it. We're not even aware that it is an overreaction. So the key for Caroline was to actually have that awareness to be able to have a look at it.
Okay, so if we find that out of character. We're just way, way overreacting to something. It could be that there was some issue in our childhood that never was resolved that we're now in our adult life reacting to. Is that about it?
Yeah, well, I think we all have like a child within, and sometimes that child can be hurt due to trouble in childhood, and life experiences in adulthood can trigger those experiences in childhood and bring them into the present.
Now, sometimes you have to do like an archaeological dig to find out, now, where did that come from? And then really research in, and then like for Caroline, her case, it was rejection that she felt in her childhood.
Yeah.
It was triggered by that seemingly innocent experience. But for other people, it's not really hard. They were bullied when they were children. People made fun of them. And so somebody might innocently say something at work, make a little comment, just maybe teasing, and all of a sudden somebody who you thought was kind of having fun is crying or really angry, or you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. I mean, I think anything can become a trigger for the hurting child, just depending on the person's experience in childhood. It could be a mannerism, it could be a personality type, it could be a situation, it could be anything can trigger something from childhood and bring it to the present. And once that happens, for that person, the situation in the present is no longer about the present. It's really about the past. And what a person needs to do is actually be able to become aware of that, make a distinction between what's happening now and what's the past, and then go on a journey about the unresolved issue, if you like, from childhood. And that will empower them actually to be able to deal with that situation in the present.
So isn't it amazing that something that could have happened when you were 5, 6 years old, an embarrassment, some kind of a really uncomfortable experience, 40 years later or something, an innocent comment or a seemingly innocent comment in a lunchroom at work or something can trigger all kinds of really intense feelings. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Yeah. Well, there's a saying that problems don't go away, and life sort of almost seems to just keep bringing these issues to the surface, a bit like, pushing the beach ball below the surface. Eventually it's going to come up at some point. And life sort of gives us those opportunities so that we can actually look at it and heal. And until we actually are able to look at it and heal, those situations will keep happening.
Is that just kind of the way we're wired? That, childhood hurts will eventually surface?
Yeah, and actually those hurts can surface from real situations in the present and imagined, in that there could actually be someone in the workplace that is bullying that person.
Oh, okay.
But it triggers childhood bullying.
Oh, so the reaction is both to the present bullying and bringing up all those feelings from back in childhood. So you have like a double reaction.
That's right. And if that bullying is triggered, if it's too overwhelming, they will respond similarly to the current bullying as they did in childhood, whereas they might go quiet, they might withdraw, they might not have words to use to create a boundary to express themselves. Or there could be someone in the workplace that reminds them of someone in childhood that was a bully.
So they could be innocent.
They could be,
person.
Yeah. They could just simply walk into the room and the person's bullying in childhood is triggered simply by a person walking into the room.
It's kind of like an allergic reaction.
Yeah.
In a sense, in that you start sneezing or whatever and there's nothing really there, but it reminds you of something. Boy, that might explain a lot of reactions I've had. Why does this person have me? It must remind a lot of people of a lot of bad experiences in the childhood. But, that could explain, why sometimes we might just be having some, what we think is friendly teasing, and all of a sudden it just goes over a line. And it triggers a whole lot. And you're like, whoa, where did this experience? I thought we were just kind of, lightly teasing here.
Yeah.
But that could explain that kind of experience.
Yeah. I mean, we can, as individuals, inadvertently trigger somebody else's childhood pain without ever intentionally trying to do it.
Oh, yeah. Unfortunately, I think I have done that.
Yes, I think we all have.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not the only one. But okay. So that's just the way it is.
Yeah, and I think we can look at these, while they can be very negative experiences, if we turn it over, it's actually can be seen as a very positive thing in that this is happening in order for us to heal. It's coming to the surface so that we can address it and grow from it and heal from it, so that when that person or another person walks into the room, we're able to actually respond from a more adult place rather than from the hurt child place.
So if we overreact, a lot of times we're just acting like we would have acted when we were 6 years old.
Yes. So it could be to withdraw and get real quiet, or it could actually be to get angry and let the words come out.
And have a temper tantrum like a little kid.
That's right.
But then you're like, oh my goodness, I'm an adult. Why am I acting like this? And if that happens, then what do we do?
If we start becoming aware of the overreaction, then that's a good sign, because then we can be empowered to address it.
So awareness is the first part of healing from this.
Step one is becoming aware. Where was I when that happened? What was said? What was going on that created that feeling, whether it be anxiety or fear or feeling abandoned or feeling angry? Let's have a look at what was going on and just examine it. And a person might be able to do that just within their own self, or they might need to go and talk to someone about it.
Now, what you're saying is we have to be aware of how we're feeling inside when things trigger things.
Yes.
For us guys, this is like an impossible task. How I feel? How do I know how I feel? I mean, so it's kind of out of the ordinary to actually realize, oh, yeah, I guess I really didn't like it when so-and-so said that. So we kind of have to go against our nature if we're not people who are really into feelings and all that stuff to begin with. But if we do, you're saying there's a reward at the end of the line.
Yeah, I guess, life is about creating balance and wholeness. And so, for guys, it's a challenge to go to the emotional. But that's where the reward is. If we're able to go there, we're able to identify and process certain emotions that are actually damaging to us, then that can only be good for us in our life and in our journeys and in our relationships.
Okay, so we've identified a common problem, having a hurting child within us, and that hurting child sometimes rears its ugly head when things trigger it. So how do we heal that hurting child is the next thing that we can talk about, and we'll do that when we return on part 2 of our conversation with Scott Morgan. He's a counselor, and he regularly deals with emotionally hurting people, and he's teaching us how to overcome the hurting child.
You're listening to Marriage and Family Life from FamilyLifeAustralia.com. You'll find loads of marriage and family-related information on our website, FamilyLifeAustralia.com. It's packed with helpful articles, great resources, and marriage conference details. That's FamilyLifeAustralia.com.
And welcome back to Marriage and Family Life, where we're speaking with Counselor Scott Morgan. He regularly deals with emotionally hurting people, and specifically today we're talking about when we overreact as adults, and sometimes it means that there was an issue from our childhood, like we were bullied or we were rejected, and now those issues from our childhood are triggering emotional issues in our adulthood. What do we do to try to overcome those issues that are making us feel uncomfortable? What do we do next to heal from these issues?
Well, the noticing is really important, but more importantly than that, once we notice it, we need to acknowledge it, because by and large, for a lot of people, these experiences are almost separate. Because they're not aware, they're separate from it. So once we start to notice it, we need to acknowledge it. We need to sort of go there and go, okay, I'm feeling this rejection. Where is this coming from? I'm feeling bullied. I'm feeling sad. And so we just acknowledge it. And it can be helpful to actually talk to the hurting child. If we can identify that it's coming from a childhood experience, it sounds a bit strange, but actually talking to that hurting child inside and saying, are you feeling, and using the feeling word.
Okay, now we'll talk about that dialogue with the hurting child, but before we do, we have been mentioning a few issues that could be triggering uncomfortableness. Abuse of any type in our childhood would trigger reactions in adulthood. Also neglect.
Yes.
If somebody never felt nurtured or affirmed, they might in adulthood be seeking affirmation in unhealthy ways. Is that true?
Yeah. So if a person has an unmet need in childhood due to not being affirmed, just not having a really legitimate childhood need met, then a person can grow up trying to get those needs met by externals. For instance, if they never felt affirmed by their parents or praised, then a person could end up doing a lot of, I don't know, like volunteer work or helping others, all for the purpose of getting the strokes, getting the, you're wonderful, thank you so much.
So in a sense, you could become a praiseaholic.
Yeah.
And you're addicted to
Yeah.
that affirmation.
Yes.
And people think, oh, he's a great guy. Look at, he's volunteering for all these things.
That's right.
Underneath it all is an unhealthy motivation.
Yeah. So whenever there's an internal need that's trying to be met by an external source, it never satisfies. What we need to do when we identify that hurt is we need to meet the need that wasn't met in childhood.
Okay, so how does that work?
Okay, so it really depends on the situation. But if, for instance, if somebody, we'll go with the bullying.
Okay, very common issue.
Yeah. So a person in their adulthood is feeling a situation that it's triggered the bullying in childhood, and they're feeling that younger part of them or that hurting part. And that can be very disempowering for a person. They can feel like they did in childhood, fairly powerless. So whether the person's able to, in the situation, if it's happening at that time, they may need to remove themselves from the situation to reduce the emotion. And they can actually talk to the hurting child and reassure them and comfort them, and really giving them the words that they needed to hear back in childhood that they didn't get.
And what would that conversation sound like?
Yeah. It's really important that we find the words that mean something to the hurting child. So what might work for one person might not work for another. So it's really about finding the right words to use. Like someone might say, I think you're really special, but it doesn't really resonate. But they might say, I think you're really valuable to me, and that might resonate. And it's up to the person using the words. I hope this is making sense.
Yeah. Well, let me just try this on for size. So say I was bullied and I just felt it was unjust. And maybe a little bit of me thought maybe I was inferior. And maybe that's why it hurt so much. Would I say to my hurting child, hey, that wasn't fair. That was not fair of them to treat you so harshly, and they're wrong. You are not inferior in some way.
That's right.
Would that be kind of the conversation?
Yeah. Because often faulty beliefs can come out of those experiences that, I'm weak, I'm weird or something like that. And those beliefs can actually stay with us if we're not aware of them.
Yeah, that could be the root cause of adult insecurity. And I have to believe this is where our Christian faith comes in, because if we've believed lies, we're inferior, we're inadequate, there's something defective about ourselves, we know we have a Heavenly Father who says, no, that's a lie. You are special. I love you. I care about you. And being reparented, so to speak,
That's right,
by our Heavenly Father, I think would go a long way toward healing that hurting child.
Yeah, once we become aware of the hurting child, we're now empowered to do something with it. When we're not aware, then it can control us. Now that we become aware, we can actually go to God, if you like, with this awareness and asking Him for healing and for wisdom and how to deal with it. And in some respects, and this might sound a little strange, but in some respects...
This whole conversation sounds strange.
So we'll
just go with it.
Let's keep going in that direction. The hurting child part is not aware of of a loving father that cares for them, that thinks the best of them. So once we become aware of the hurting child, we can introduce, if you like, that hurting child to Father God. And we can start looking at some of the feelings and some of the beliefs that don't match up with what Father God thinks. And that can be very helpful in the healing process.
And also, I would think that knowing that God is just as offended by injustices that you experienced. He's just as offended as you are. I think that's therapeutic, and that's very comforting as well.
Yeah.
I mean, he's on our side, and he's not really happy about how you were bullied.
Yeah, well, the hurting child often feels responsible. They feel a lot of shame about, if it's bullying. With really any kind of childhood neglect, the child can carry that responsibility and personalize it as though there's something wrong with them, where in fact it's actually just something wasn't right in their environment. So when we go to God with our hurting child, we can get a totally different worldview, if you like.
Well, we're matching it up with the worldview, God's view.
That's right. Yeah. And the more mature part of us can do that journey with the hurting child because we become responsible for it once we become aware of it.
Okay, so if we bring it to God for healing, what would that prayer be like?
I think it needs to be personal to the person. A general approach might be something like, Father God, I'm becoming aware of this hurt that I've been carrying around bullying or around feeling rejected in childhood. And Father God, I'm becoming aware of this issue. I'm becoming aware of this hurt, and I'm wanting to bring it to you. And Lord, can you help me to nurture and help heal this hurting part of me? So it's kind of, we become almost, we go into partnership with God rather than just sort of become aware of this hurt and want to hand it over to God to fix. I think often God wants to work with us to heal, so that we become more and more whole as we walk our journey.
So it's a journey of healing.
Yeah, very rarely I don't come across people getting zapped all that often, although it's a great desire for a lot of us to just be zapped. Because I think in some respects, when we become aware of the hurting child, it can be overwhelming and we don't know what to do with it and we just want it dealt with. However, I think what God really wants to do with us is help us to address the need through relationship with Him.
And through relationship with others?
Absolutely.
So sharing it, what you're going through, with somebody you trust and you know is mature can be very helpful as well.
Yeah, again, I think it comes back to the level of hurt in the child. If it's a once-in-a-while thing, an isolated situation that seems to trigger the hurting child, that person might be able to just become aware of it, recognize where it's come from, address the child's need, and there's a lessening in that feeling of hurt, and they're able to move on. Whereas other people, it might be a little bit more intense. The feelings actually sort of flood the person, so they find it really difficult to, it becomes more overwhelming than manageable in the awareness. And that's when it's really good to come alongside other people that we trust, that we can say, I'm becoming aware of this situation and it's causing me a whole lot of pain. And then you can just share the story, what happened, whether it's the present situation, I went to work and such, and or I remember in childhood, and the person can start to share that memory of when they were at school and they were in grade 4.
People made fun of me, and
the
all
grade
that kind
6
of stuff,
bully came and created a lot of discomfort. And so the sharing the story is part of the healing journey.
And I would think somebody affirming that, wow, that had to be a hard experience.
Absolutely.
I mean, that didn't feel good when people were laughing at you or whatever. I would think that would be helpful as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks.
Again, Scott Morgan is a counselor and regularly deals with emotionally hurting people.